Beautiful sunset. We are live from the North Shore of Big Pine, and I am here to talk to you today about pot, soil, and water. Like these plants I have in the gardens right next to these key deer. Some orchids. Aloe. My name is Mr. Gorski. I know you see John under my name. That's not my real name. Refer to me as Mr. Gorski. This aloe is the world's greatest cure for sunburn. 100% organic. These orchids were in a pot. They're not bloomed because it's the winter season. Many people look at pot as a structure, the foundation to their family. They use family as the structure, and that's what they understand. Unfortunately for me, most of my life, I was an orphan. Foster kid, orphanages, shelters, and temporary foster homes. And a lot of my long-term foster parents were biological aunts and uncles and distant family members. So, for my structure, instead of family, I had to use the absence of family. Sometimes in my life, I got to live with distant relatives. Maine, California, Western Canada, the whole 9 yards. And they told me many things of my family's ancestry and our path from the old world to the new world and a West off like cowboys. And it was the struggle I heard of my people which gives me strength and has given me strength through the hardest experiences of my life, to include battlefields of Asia and of my humble beginnings, street brawls, street fights, alongside my dear crew of friends and foster sisters. I was fortunately enough to be the only guy in a crew of a bunch of Central European orphans, all living in Greenpoint, Middle Village, Brooklyn, New York. And it was in those first street fights, us against them, my companions getting to a girl fight. Then, if you know anything about New York, fights escalate. Their crews rush up, and I was the only male in my crew. But every other crew had a bunch of males, so I had to make the difference. As far as nutrients, soil, people would consider friends as their soil. I have a different opinion of friends. What you consider friends, I would at best probably call acquaintances. My definition of friends, you would probably word as combat veterans. And the only people I could really consider family are people that have stood side by side, shoulder and shoulder, our crew against their crew. And only those certain few individuals have the honor and privilege of being in my family. Water. What gives us life, the birthplace of life. All life evolved from the sea. From amphibians that laid eggs on lands became reptiles, reptiles to dinosaurs, dinosaurs to mammals, mammals to humans, yada, yada, yada. What drives me through my career of orphanages and foster homes, Bath, Maine, South Walpole, Boston, South Walpole, a suburb of Boston, all over Connecticut, Brooklyn, the west coast of Florida, Canadian Pacific coast, and Southern California. I got to have a bunch of experiences, and these experiences pushed me towards hobbies and interests. Being an FKC student, I couldn't graduate without taking dive classes and getting a dive degree. Good stuff. Can't go wrong with dive gear. I did the math the other day, last week during my birthday. And it's hard to believe 7 years ago I became a U.S. American infantry combat veteran. And then 5 years ago on my second tour, got this combat injury. So to make up for that, got into cool things like scuba diving. I have to propel and push myself to the next adventure, if you will. If I don't, the gravity of all the combat situations I've dealt with before will catch up to me. So after scuba diving, I like to spend a lot of time outdoors and surviving, learning how to live off the land. And to survive, man must make fire. To make fires and shelters, gotta chop down some trees. So I really appreciate these Viking axes. They also come with a hobby of axe throwing, which is always a good skill to have. But scuba diving also brings us to dive knives and a collection of knives, which is also a lot better than throwing darts and a cool skill. Great stuff. After diving, I've been recuperating, trying to regain all my strength. It's been a long journey over the last 5 years. 5 years ago, in a wheelchair. Graduated to crutches, hobbling around on crutches, to finally 4-prong cane. My cardio capacity has been kind of limited, so as much as I can, I try to lift things up to put them down. Got to lift things up to put them down. after weightlifting, like I said, I've traveled to the fatherland and I've made a bunch of collections. Having foster homes and being sent to Europe to see all my family over there has been great for me. Get to collect items like this flail. It's really great stuff. As well as this mace. It's good stuff right here. I have 3 collections of firearms, antique weapons, and Mustangs and Camaros. And I try my best to separate my collection. I have a safe house in the mountains of Northern California, all the way on the West Coast, symbolized by a 38. Over here on the East Coast, next to my work, I have a place next to the Potomac in Virginia, symbolized by this peacemaker. And my home base, my Caribbean seaside hideout, symbolized by this 45, the Caribbean. Well, I'm in California, I like to hunt. And when I hunt, I'm a bowman. So the crossbow archery is my favorite hobbies. Absolutely no hunting on big pond whatsoever. But it's nice here to see the animals. But in the wild, with archery comes tracking, hunting, survival skills, all come together. Best thing about a bow is they're quiet, and in the end of the world, when you get somebody with your bow, you can always take the bolt out, reuse it. Bullets might one day come extinct. When bullets become extinct, this becomes very handy. Not only was I a foster kid, but I grew up and became a foster parent. Something all the kids always like are the games, the shotgun games of skeet and trap. It's good to teach kids how to defend themselves, get them out there playing the professional Olympic game of skeet or trap. It's good. After archery, I'm only left with my bread and butter, how I earned a paycheck. Marksmanship's a great hobby. I just try to keep up with the young kids. I try to stay as cool as possible with technology. Like a silly Surface Pro 3, which you think would be convenient, but really, even though you can take the keyboard off and have this silly little pen to write whatever you want, everything looks in a different format. So for D2L kind of stuff, it's been really difficult to use this stuff. Everything is looking different and hidden in different places. As for my overall goals, so far I put together a place in the Pacific, a place on the East Coast, a place in the Caribbean, and I recently inherited some ancestral land back in Central Europe, where it comes with a big main house, like all my family on that street, and all my families have the same rectangle properties. They own all the stores in the little village, and then behind their houses they have farmlands with their own 20th century airfields. Their strips of farm take them back through farms and all the horses and cattle they own. And then at the end of the rectangles, it leads them to a lake where they all have lake houses where they race their sailboats in the winter around this crystal clear lake. But the rectangular properties go across the lake to the other side, where they all have hunting cabins on the mountains on the other side of the lake. So it's my dream, my goal, my interest to string together all these collections I have. I have a collection of Mustang and Camaros, antique weapons, firearms, divided into 3 over the U.S., West Coast, East Coast, Caribbean coast, and the European ancestral homeland. I would like to have my own maybe sailing vessels to make way in case there's no means of fossil fuel propulsion, and seaplane, sea chopper,